You plan your life around your family. You show up. You rearrange meetings, cancel vacations, and keep saying yes, even when it costs you something. Because that's what family's supposed to mean, right? That you put their needs first. That you trust them when they say it's urgent. So when my mom called, her voice shaking, saying, "Grandma collapsed. It's bad. We need you to stay and look after her while we go handle the cruise logistics." I didn't question it. I dropped everything. I stayed behind. I unpacked my bags. I texted my siblings, told them to have a great trip. And I sat beside Grandma's recliner, quietly watching for symptoms. That never showed up. She was fine, confused why I kept checking her blood pressure, still sharp enough to ask, "Why are you acting like I'm dying?" At first, I thought maybe they overreacted. Maybe there'd been a scare I didn't know about. But 3 days later, my cousin posted a photo from the cruise on deck with my parents, my siblings, their spouses, all smiles, drinks in hand. No hospital bracelets, no emergency calls, just a family vacation without me. And I wasn't just forgotten. I was excluded, deliberately. But here's the thing. While they were toasting champagne and posing for sunset selfies, I was uncovering something they never expected me to see. Because the lie wasn't about the cruise was just a distraction. The real betrayal? It had been planned weeks before. And what they didn't know was that I'd been paying attention to the way they whispered when Grandma left the room, to the legal folder that suddenly disappeared from her drawer, to the name she kept repeating when she thought no one was listening. Mine. They thought they were clever, that I'd be hurt, maybe humiliated, but silent. But while they were sailing off thinking they'd won, I was collecting every receipt they didn't bother hiding. This isn't just a story about a missed vacation. It's about a trap they built for me, and the one I quietly built back. Because when your own family tries to cut you out of the picture, you can either fade away, or you can wait until they come home and show them what happens when you stop playing along. If you looked at us from the outside, we probably looked like a close family. My parents, Martha and Dennis, hosted every holiday with the same polished perfection you'd see in magazine spreads, candles lit, napkins folded, smiles rehearsed. My sister Melanie was the favorite, always had been. She knew how to shine, how to nod along and play the role. My brother Chris was the charmer, always slipping through life with a grin and a wink, forgiven before he ever said sorry. And me, I was the one who showed up, quietly, reliably, invisibly. They never had to wonder if I'd help. They just assumed I would. If Melanie's kids needed babysitting, I'd adjust my schedule. If Grandma's prescriptions needed picking up, I'd go without asking. If something had to be canceled for the sake of family priorities, it was always mine. Still, when they announced the cruise, I let myself hope. It was pitched as a legacy trip. 7 days, all-inclusive, Caribbean. A chance to celebrate family, reconnect, they said. A once-in-a-decade moment. Everyone was invited, me included. It felt surreal. For once, I was part of the picture, not just holding the camera. They added me to the group chat. They sent me the itinerary. Even my name was on the matching t-shirt order. And then, 5 days before departure, the phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was tight, controlled, but with just enough panic to sound urgent. "Honey, I need you to stay. Grandma's not well. She collapsed this morning. We're still going on the cruise. We can't reschedule, but someone needs to stay with her. She asked for you." I was stunned. Grandma collapsed? She's stable for now. But it's best to have someone in the house just for the week. I don't know why I didn't question it harder. Maybe because I wanted to believe I was being trusted, that they needed me. I agreed. I canceled my PTO, unpacked my suitcase, texted the group chat saying I couldn't make it. Melanie responded with a thumbs-up emoji. That was the last I heard from any of them. That night, I drove to Grandma's. She opened the door herself. No Ive, no oxygen tank, no dizziness. She was fully dressed, humming as she kneaded bread dough on the counter. "Collapsed?" she laughed. "Only thing I've collapsed into is my recliner after Jeopardy." I stared at her. Either they lied to me or she was the fastest healer in medical history. But I said nothing, just smiled, set my bags down, and told her I'd be staying a few days to help out. We spent the next morning watering her plants, and that's when her neighbor, Mr. Franklin, waved from across the fence and said, "Shame you couldn't make the cruise. Your folks looked great this morning heading out." I blinked. This morning? Yeah, saw them load up the car around 7 a.m. sharp, the whole crew, even Melanie's dog. He chuckled and went back to pruning his rose bushes, and I just stood there, feeling the heat crawl up my neck. They'd left that morning, which meant when Mom called me to stay behind, Grandma wasn't sick at all. They didn't ask me to help. They removed me. I went inside and sat down with Grandma, trying to make sense of it. They said you collapsed, that I needed to stay with you. She furrowed her brow. Collapsed? That's a new one. And then she leaned back, rubbed her temples, and said, "You know, I told your mother last month that I was adjusting my will, adding a section to leave the garden property to you." She looked out the window at the raised beds we'd built together over the last year. She said it would make things complicated, told me not to play favorites. I told her it wasn't about favorites. It was about honesty. And then she added, barely above a whisper, "If they knew everything I've told you, they'd panic." It hit me all at once. This wasn't about my seat on a cruise. It was about my seat at the table. They didn't want me there because they were planning something they didn't want me to see. And for the first time in my life, I realized they weren't just pretending I didn't matter. They were trying to make it true. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you time. It gives you space. And sometimes it gives you just enough silence to hear the truth behind the noise. I wish I could say I confronted them right away, that I stormed the group chat, called someone out, demanded an answer, but I didn't. I sat in Grandma's living room staring at that cruise photo on my phone, zooming in on their faces, frozen in time, smiling, relaxed, not a single trace of guilt. My stomach twisted, not just from being excluded, but from how seamless it all looked without me. Like I was never supposed to be there in the first place. I didn't tell Grandma. I didn't want to upset her, but I started paying attention closer than ever before. Every drawer she opened, every folder she sorted through, every odd comment she made about how things change when people get greedy. A few nights later, I was helping her organize old mail. That's when I found it. A manila envelope buried under a pile of junk papers. No label, just a faint coffee ring on the corner. Inside were 2 printed documents. One was titled, "Last Will and Testament, Lillian May Sanders." The second, "Amendment Request," prepared by Dennis and Martha Reynolds. My breath caught. The amendment wasn't signed, but the intent was clear. It proposed reallocating Grandma's estate so that oversight and asset distribution remain in the hands of long-term family decision-makers, with my name completely omitted. In its place, a new clause that gave my parents full control of the trust, another that gave my siblings the house, the land, and any auxiliary assets, including sentimental heirlooms. I checked the date. It was drafted 3 weeks before the cruise. Suddenly, that fake hospital call made perfect sense. They didn't just want me off the trip. They wanted me out of the way, quietly, so they could finalize their edits without interference. I wanted to scream. Instead, I started taking photos. Every document, every date stamp, every time Grandma mentioned her will out loud, I recorded her, subtly, talking about her wishes. Not in a deceptive way, but as protection. Because I'd seen what they were capable of. And I wasn't about to let them gaslight me out of what was true. Then came the recording. One night, Grandma asked me to help clear out her voicemail inbox. She'd accidentally saved dozens of old messages, mostly robocalls. But one message made me freeze. It was Dad's voice, left on her phone while she was napping, likely thinking she wouldn't listen. "Look, you can't keep dangling the garden in front of her. She's emotional. And she'll manipulate you with all that caretaker guilt. Just finalize the papers when we're back. If she finds out, we'll say it was a misunderstanding. He was talking about me. The same garden Grandma had said she wanted me to have. The one I'd planted rose bushes in as a teenager." My heart dropped. Not because he doubted me, but because he was trying to erase me from her story altogether. They weren't just lying. They were laying the groundwork to legally push me aside, using Grandma's trust as the battlefield. I backed up the recording, saved it to multiple devices. Then I sat with Grandma the next day and asked her calmly, "Have you made any recent changes to your will?" She raised an eyebrow. "No, why would I?" I told her what I found. Not everything, not the voicemail yet. Just the document. Her lips thinned. Her hands, folded over her lap, tightened. I told them no. I told them I wasn't changing anything. She whispered. They said it was just a backup, that it wouldn't be filed without my consent. She paused. I should have known better. That's when I showed her the amendment. And that's when she gave me the second shock of the week. She reached for a green leather folder on her bookshelf. Inside was another will, updated by her actual attorney. This one did include me, not out of pity or pressure, but because she chose to. "You're the one who's shown up," she said. "You're the one who stayed." Then she added, with a small smirk, "They forgot that I'm old, not stupid." It was all I needed. I called a lawyer that afternoon, a woman named Clara, smart, calm, strategic. She listened to my story in silence. Then she said the words that unlocked everything. This could qualify as undue influence, especially if they were attempting to isolate you from her and push will changes while she was vulnerable. I didn't need revenge. I needed protection for both of us. We started the paperwork. I helped Grandma file a declaration stating no changes were to be made to her estate without her lawyer present. I submitted a private complaint to the State Elder Protection Unit, anonymous for now, but clear. And I wrote a letter to my parents. Not angry, just factual. "I know what you did. I know why you left me behind. And I'm not staying quiet about it. I didn't hit send. Not yet. Because while they were still out at sea, I had one more move to make, and the game wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They say the best revenge is living well. But sometimes, the best revenge is letting the facts speak louder than you ever have to. And facts? I had plenty of them. The amendment, the voicemail, the paper trail of manipulation. While they were cruising the Caribbean, sipping cocktails in linen and sunglasses, I was back home, working with a lawyer and preparing for a showdown they wouldn't even see coming. Clara, my attorney, was the kind of woman who didn't blink when presented with family drama. She'd handled cases like mine before. Quiet coercion, estate manipulation, betrayal disguised as just planning ahead. And once she reviewed the documents and recordings, she gave me one clear instruction. "We need to freeze this, now. If they come back and try to file anything, you'll lose the window. Let's lock it down before they know what's happening." Step 1. Legal lockdown. We filed a motion with Grandma's estate attorney to formally reaffirm the current, legitimate will, the one Grandma signed just 4 months earlier. It included a clause: no changes permitted without a physician's mental competency exam and both attorney and notary present. That move alone created a legal barrier thick enough to keep my parents out. Step 2. Power of attorney protection. Grandma granted me limited power of attorney, specifically for health and estate matters. It wasn't about control. It was about protection. She trusted me. She chose me. I still remember her saying, "I may not be around much longer. I want to make sure the right person is holding the pen." Step 3. Preemptive reporting. We submitted a confidential report to the state's Adult Protective Services detailing the attempted manipulation. Not an accusation, just a documentation, a breadcrumb trail. It meant that if my parents tried anything upon their return, there'd already be a file open. And then, just to add a little more pressure, I made one more move outside the courtroom. Step 4. Public awareness. A friend of mine runs a local blog focused on elder abuse and inheritance fraud, quiet cases that never make the headlines. I gave her the story. No names, no specifics, but enough detail to make it real. Within days, the post exploded in the community. Daughter left behind. During family cruise discovers. Shocking truth. Inheritance manipulation, rising across generations. It wasn't just a story. It was a warning shot. and I knew my parents read that blog. So when they finally came home, sunburned, glowing, and smug, they walked into something they hadn't packed for. Silence. No calls from Grandma. No warm welcome. No family brunch to brag about their once-in-a-lifetime trip. Just Grandma's attorney, waiting to schedule a meeting. And me, we sat down in her living room. Me, Grandma, her lawyer, my parents. My dad looked confused, trying to play casual. What's this about? Can we not just talk like a family? But it was my mother who cracked first. Her smile faded the moment the attorney placed a printed copy of the unsigned amendment on the coffee table. "This is your handwriting," he said, but not her wishes. Then I played the voicemail. My father's voice, clear as day. "She's emotional. I just finalized the papers when we're back." You could hear a pin drop. My mom started talking fast. "It was just a suggestion. We weren't trying to change anything, just prepare." But Grandma wasn't buying it. She sat there, spine straight, eyes locked onto them both. "You lied to her," she said softly. "You used my name. You used my health to get her out of the way. And you tried to make decisions for me that I never agreed to." Then she turned to me. "You didn't scream. You didn't make a mess. You just let me see the truth." And then, for the first time in my life, I watched my parents lose control of the room. Grandma formally removed them as successor trustees. She appointed me executor of her estate and medical proxy going forward. Her will was refiled, certified, and sealed with conditions they couldn't alter. They tried to argue, of course, said I was manipulating her, said I was weaponizing emotion. But this time, I had more than emotion. I had evidence. I had the law. And most of all, I had her. My siblings fell strangely silent. Even my golden child sister couldn't defend what had happened. And my parents, they backed off. Not because they forgave me, not because they understood, but because they were scared. Scared of the blog, scared of the paper trail, scared of the woman they thought was too quiet to ever fight back. I didn't need to yell, didn't need to burn bridges. I just had to show them I wasn't the same girl they used to control. Because when they tried to exclude me, they accidentally gave me the clearest view of who they really were. And now it was my turn to decide what came next. You'd think the story ended there, that after the confrontation, they'd shrink away and finally stop trying to rewrite the script. But people like my parents don't stop when they're caught. They shift, they regroup, and when charm and manipulation fail, they reach for pity. A week after the confrontation, I got a call from my mom. Her voice cracked with forced emotion. "We were just trying to protect the family. You don't understand how complicated estate planning is. You've never had to carry that burden." She tried to reframe the whole thing, as if I was the villain, as if I had disrupted a carefully planned legacy. Instead of uncovering an intentional deception, I didn't answer her accusations. I just said, "You didn't protect the family. You tried to erase part of it." And then I hung up. Because what they didn't know, what they couldn't have imagined, was that Grandma had one more card up her sleeve. After the dust settled, Grandma called me into her room one afternoon. She was holding a leather-bound file I'd never seen before. "There's something I never told them," she said, "because I didn't trust them to use it wisely. But you've earned the right to know." Inside the file was a copy of a second trust, not just a will, a living trust she'd established 10 years earlier, with her own private attorney, separate from the family's usual legal channels. This trust was funded with assets no one else knew about, an old rental property, some war bonds, and a modest but well-performing investment account. She'd never mentioned it to anyone, not even to me. But the real surprise was this. If any of my heirs attempt to manipulate or deceive me in matters concerning my estate, and if proof of that deception surfaces, their claim to this trust is nullified, and the entire balance transfers to the heir named here. My full name. She tapped the line with my name written in her precise, looping script. I blinked. "You created this in case something like this happened?" She nodded. "People behave differently when they think you're weak. so I made sure their behavior wouldn't go unrewarded. I was stunned. All the while, they were trying to shove me out of her story. Grandma had already built a backup ending, one where truth, not bloodline politics, decided the outcome. Clara reviewed the trust and confirmed it was legally airtight. Once we presented the audio recordings, the unsigned amendment, and the documented attempts at isolation, the family's claim to the trust funds was void. Grandma signed the transfer paperwork the same day. That secondary trust, close to $320, $100 in assets, was released to me, not because I fought for money, but because I didn't let them take it by lying. We didn't tell them. There was no press release, no final confrontation, no parade. We let them think it was over, let them think they'd been shamed, but spared. Until a week later, when they got a letter from the attorney, a formal notification of disinheritance, a polite explanation that due to their conduct, they were no longer named in the primary will or the backup trust. No yelling, no courtroom drama, just silence and signatures. By then, the blog post about inheritance fraud had gained traction. A second article was published, this time anonymous quotes from people who recognized the patterns, caretakers left behind, parents who turned siblings against each other, women like me who were made to feel too sensitive for noticing something was wrong. People reached out, privately, quietly, with their own stories of being left behind by the very people they'd sacrificed everything for. It wasn't just me, it was a pattern. My parents didn't reach out again. Neither did my siblings. Melanie removed me from the family group chat. Chris never texted. And honestly, that silence felt cleaner than any apology ever could, because it meant I finally understood my place. Not the helper, not the extra, not the one who'd rearrange her life to be included. I wasn't part of their version of family anymore, but I wasn't excluded. I had stepped out, on purpose. I asked her one evening, quietly, if she regretted any of it. She shook her head and said, "I don't regret removing them. I regret not seeing it sooner. But you showed me what loyalty actually looks like. You showed me that silence isn't submission. Sometimes it's strategy. And I've held on to that ever since. Because in the end, I didn't win by being louder. I won by being clearer. It's funny. I used to think being left out was the worst feeling in the world. I thought silence meant rejection. That if they didn't pick you, didn't include you, you must not be worth very much. But what this experience taught me is that sometimes being left behind is exactly what you need to finally move forward. They didn't just leave me off a cruise. They tried to cut me out of my own family story. They used Grandma's name, her health, her trust, just to shift power in their direction. And they thought I'd never push back. They saw me as the one who always said yes, the one who never made a scene, the one who forgave too quickly, who folded under guilt, who backed down when things got uncomfortable. What they didn't see coming was the version of me who got smart, who documented everything, who stayed calm and used their arrogance against them. Grandma and I turned her home into a space that finally felt like hers again, peaceful, unburdened. We brought back her garden, cleared out the dusty boxes filled with fake promises and polished lies, replaced them with laughter and quiet and honesty. I used a portion of the inheritance to build something she always wanted, a small greenhouse behind the house. It's not big, just room enough for her orchids and some folding chairs. She calls it her peace house. I call it a monument to everything we survived. I started writing again. The kind of writing I used to do before I got so consumed by caregiving, family drama, and trying to earn my place. I even launched a small online community called The Second Row. It's for people who always felt like the backup plan in their own family, the ones who gave and gave only to be forgotten or quietly replaced. We share stories, resources, and most importantly, remind each other that being excluded doesn't mean being worthless. Because the truth is, sometimes being left out is the greatest clarity you'll ever get. I used to crave a seat at their table. Now, I'm building my own, and not out of spite, not out of revenge, but out of peace. Because when you finally stop asking people to see your worth, you start seeing it in yourself, and you learn how to protect it. One morning, as we sat in the greenhouse with warm mugs of tea, she looked at me and said, "They didn't realize something important. You don't win by pushing someone out. You lose the second they stop trying to get back in." That line lives in my bones now, because I didn't fight them to prove anything. I fought to protect what was already mine: love, legacy, and the quiet kind of loyalty that doesn't need to be broadcast. Maybe you've been left behind. Maybe your family went on without you, literally or emotionally. Maybe you've been the one standing outside the door, wondering what you did wrong. Let me say this clearly. You didn't do anything wrong. They just never expected you to get up and walk in through a different door. One you built yourself, one with your name on it. If you've ever been excluded from something you cared about, if you've ever had to fight for your place, or worse, realize you never needed their approval to begin with. Drop a comment below. Share your story. Say, "I see me in this," if you're done trying to shrink yourself for someone else's comfort. And if this story spoke to something deep inside you, subscribe to this channel, because here we tell the truth, the kind that heals, the kind that holds people accountable, and the kind that reminds you you're not alone. Next time, I'll tell you the story of the day my stepmom looked me in the eye and said, "I gave your trust fund to your stepsister. She's more deserving than you," and how I made sure she never touched another cent of it. You won't want to miss that. Until then, remember, you are not invisible, and you were never the extra. You were always the one they feared would figure it out. And now you have